Yep. Hey, people are coming in. Hey, that's cool. Okay. Yeah, I talk. I'm talking. How come I can't pin my thing? Oh, I'm recording because now we're recording and we're going to look at this stuff and see how it works. So changing cams here. I've got mine down here on the bird's eye view cam for you guys. So I'll be interested to see if you guys don't like this or if you want to pitch a fit, because now you do have to unmute your mics to join in a discussion, oral critique of a project. And so please do unmute those mics, because we'd like to take this from the general towards the specific. For the most general thing you can notice about this thing perhaps would be the overall orientation of in space of the composition, and then from there, and I'm trying to get this right underneath my webcam so that I don't get too much trapezoiding distortion of the image. If the image itself on the flat tabletop is parallel in both X and Y axes to the image recorder to the camera up above it, then we should have a fairly rectangular and square thing to look at. All right, you guys, I need you guys to unmute your mics and actually, you know, talk to me, because otherwise it gets scary. Ethan, good morning. How are you?
How are you?
I'm good. So from the general towards the specific, is there anything in this composition that jumps out at you, especially about shape?
Yeah, well, first off, it's vertical, obviously, which is kind of cool because I don't think too many people have done that in class yet.
Okay.
I like how the shapes come out of the frame, and I think it's really cool that her little whatever the thing is in her hand is goes behind that yellow line. I like the heart too. I think you use like the rule of thirds kind of with where you place the lady, and I think that's pretty cool.
Okay, well, you've said a whole lot, and we need to kind of deconstruct it a little bit, if you'll permit me. Did I mention a rule of thirds in here already? Because I didn't know if I did or not, or if you guys picked it up from the text, or what. Ethan, did you get the rule of thirds when you were in high school and in design class and stuff like that?
I don't know. I've known that for a long time. I really like photography, so that's a big part of photography.
Yes. Okay. Well, if you'll permit me, I have to digress a little bit, because he brought up a thing that your authors don't talk about, and that sometimes we talk about in a drawing class, and sometimes in a photography class, sometimes in a videography class. And oftentimes it's overlooked in design just because we're moving so darn fast. But this idea of thirds, if you take the composition and divide it into thirds, an upper third, a middle third, and a lower third, and you can also divide it into a left third, a middle third, and a right third, that kind of gives you that Hollywood Squares effect of like 9 different segments or quadrants, you know, in the composition where you can place things. And what Ethan was alluding to is that if you take this like figure and look at the central vertical axis of it, it's over on like one of the third lines possibly, so that it's not centered in the composition. Although, you know, with her feathered boa and everything else, to get her into this composition, kind of had to go this way anyway. But that opened up some other ideas about putting like these horizontal lines up here in the upper register, which kind of is the upper third of the composition, or this area down here, which is in the lower third of the composition, something like that. So that tries to fill in some of the gaps. And if anybody's going into design, the rule of thirds is a really nice one to have in your imaginary artistic toolkit or design toolkit, which I always kind of pantomime is sitting on my hip with all of these wonderful tools in it that I can use to create stuff. Okay, so would somebody besides Ethan, because he's so generous and he also likes to talk, and that's really cool, but somebody who doesn't like to talk, like, I don't know, Kaprina or Zeke or Kelsey, somebody else, want to notice anything about this before it gets all used up by everybody else?
To me, it's very reminiscent of like the pop art or pop culture kind of back in the 80s. Like stuff like Andy Warhol, or I don't know, I'm not exactly reminiscent on other names of pop culture artists, but the use of different colored shapes, and especially the primary colors, kind of gives it a somewhat burst out of the monotone colors of the other shapes and characters.
That was great. That's awesome. Thank you. And you, again, you're picking up on other kinds of things that we haven't even covered yet, like primary colors. Red, yellow, and blue are going to be considered our primary colors for pigments. And we're going to deal with that next quarter in color theory. Color theory next quarter is Art 116 design, and basically we're going to take all quarter long just dealing with colors and color relationships in a composition. And since I'm not really dealing with those ideas right now, all I was looking for were some things that were kind of in contrast to each other and in contrast to some of the black and white and gray elements that I had. So I played with a few color things, which in the instructions I kind of invited you to play with a little bit. And so that's fine. You can have some colored stuff in your composition if you want. Now I'm handing it back to Zeke. Did you want to say anything else about the composition?
Also, by looking at the yellow rectangle is in front of the feather boa and the blue one is behind, it shows signs of depth.
Yeah, thank you. And you know, again, overlapping is a really cool thing because overlapping can show some depth. Colors also play a role in depth perception in a composition. And so, if I may, I'm a quarter ahead of us now, but warm colors tend to advance in a composition toward the viewer. Cool colors tend to recede away from the viewer. And so when you have something like this, it tends to open up and create more of a sense of depth in a composition. But also any time that you've got contrasting colors or values that are overlapping a little bit, it can also create some kind of a sense of depth in a composition. And what I really like, which is more important than creating depth, is how to get the compositional elements to interact more, to make visual linkages between elements. And the easiest way to do that is to get them close to each other, getting them to share an edge, or to get them to overlap. You know, the closer they come in contact with each other, the more strong the visual linkages are between shapes in a composition. And so something that I was playing with was just getting a teeny tiny little overlapping of things, little teeny tiny overlapping. I was also trying to look at some kind of a you know, an alignment of some shapes here. Some shapes are going that way, some shapes may align, you know, on a more on a vertical-ish kind of a thing. But I didn't want to overlap too darn much in all areas, because I have a lot of super overlapping happening up here, which was interesting. Okay, enough about me. Is there anybody else who wants to play our game here? Otherwise, I'm gonna see the problem is if we don't do this, then we have to critique one of yours, which gets a little scary a little fast. So I'm just trying to think if I've got this parallel. or not. Maybe that's okay. That's better. Okay. Anyway, let's see. Katrina, hi, hello. What a surprise.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I kind of like how the amorphous shape, the feathers, are a part of the biomorphic shape. So you kind of combined the two because it looks like she's holding the hat with the feathers and she has the feathers on her body. And I think that's a cool way of doing this project.
Well, thank you. But you know, that was in our Vogue magazine, and so I just had to play with what I had. Now, I could have tried to sample the feather costume that she had on without her in it. I was, you know, I contemplated that, to just have that cloud of feathers, but there was so much joy in the image. And I thought I was going to get a twofer out of the deal, two for the price of one. I got both a biomorphic form and a amorphous form out of the one image. So, you know, if I could get a twofer, that's fantastic. So thank you. Thank you for noticing that. Yeah. And with trying to do the outside edge of the feathered costume, I did a lot of weirdness. I had to invent a technique. So I came in with my X-Acto knife and I just started to pull and make little tiny cuts along the edge of the thing, kind of in the same direction as the feathers. And then I would cut either with an X-Acto knife or with the scissors. And sometimes I was making cuts that were kind of crossing to each other to get more triangular kinds of cuts. And so I got a variety of stuff like that. It was a cheater way of trying to break up that edge to get the amorphous form to happen. Now I also, another cheater thing that I've got going for me here is that I've got both amorphous form happening with the edge of the shape. I've got kind of an amorphous texture happening in the middle of the shape. We haven't talked about texture yet. I mean, that's another chapter that we're still going to talk about. But as you can see, all of these things, line, shape, value, texture, color, are always working together. And you know, you can't really talk about them in a vacuum without the other ones kind of being present sometimes. And so with an amorphous shape often comes an amorphous texture. The thing to worry about, or the thing to pay attention to, I guess, is to make sure that you've got the amorphous texture, including the amorphous outside edge of the shape, so that it's an ill-defined shape. Otherwise, some people just cut it out as a square and they've got all this amorphous texture there and they go, well, I've got an amorphous shape. I'm going, yeah, but the outside edge is actually a rectangle. And so your shape is a rectangle, your texture is amorphous. And so that doesn't quite count as a shape concept. And so that's a thing that we have to kind of play with, is the, you know, the distinction between shape and texture in this case. Now, I probably said that, and now everybody's got amorphous shapes on their composition that have, you know, like some kind of much more well-defined edges to them. Now you're probably going to desperately go back and try to chop it up so that you got a less well-defined edge on your amorphous shape. And maybe that's why I don't have a whole lot of people rushing the exits, rushing in, trying to share their projects with me today. I don't know. I don't know what the answer is. I burned up 20 minutes though of our own oral critique process talking about mine. Is there, so I'm going to take mine away, and I'd like to invite anybody else who has one that's ready to go to try to go ahead and play our game. I'm going to return to my talking head view, and then I'd like to ask anybody else who has one to unmute their mic and go ahead and use the screen share feature to share your piece. And otherwise, I may have to get on to the next project here because I can start to discuss the next project, and we could come back to our critique on Wednesday if we had to. But I could preview our next project in the time we have left today. So do I have any takers? And I'm not getting mad. I'm not getting mad at people. It doesn't help to get mad. I just need to manage our time well. So any other folks who might want to share a project this morning, Black Crack of Dawn on a Monday morning? Okay, let me go grab a book. Since I've got my overhead bird's eye view cam, I can just share some pages out of a book with you that I happen to have that I usually share about a week into the next project that I'm going to do. So give me a minute and I'm going to grab that book out of my office and I will be right back. All right, are you still with me? Did I lose anybody in the process? Okay, we're changing gears here. The next unit that we're going to deal with after shape this week, we're going to go right into value, because value is kind of a big deal in art. So we use all kinds of different ways of drawing and creating value in compositions, whether it's shades of gray or whatever. And so we're going to do the traditional value scale as an exercise to play with value. But what I want to do is a drawing. I want to do a drawing in this class. And so I'm going to show you examples of a guy who, this book was given to me when I graduated from high school. And it's called The Pencil by Paul Cal, but really, you know, he is an artist, or he was an artist in the 1970s and 80s, and he was an illustrator. And so a lot of what he's able to achieve in these drawings is value-based. Value is the shades of gray, all the way from black through the middle grays, all the way up into the high keys towards white. And to be able to render lots of different values allows you to have all kinds of control over how you do a composition. I would actually like us to do a drawing for the next project, and I see one here. Okay, so as an illustrator, you know, he often was asked to do things like paintings or drawings for magazine covers and that kind of thing, to illustrate different stories in a magazine. And so we've got a Time magazine cover of labor organizer George Meany. Anyway, and some of the preliminary drawings are really interesting to me because of the way that he uses value. So let's see if I can, I'm going to move the camera down a little bit just so that we can get a little closer to this composition so we can see what we're talking about here. I'm going to bring my camera closer and move it down so I can just really zoom in on the book here. All right, but I've got to keep it level so that everything's level. Okay, so what we're going to do is try to do a self-portrait of ourselves. And I think I'll start with talking about this one first. And so I'd like us to use a photograph, a selfie, something of ourselves that we can actually trace, you know, onto a piece of paper, or even, you know, onto a piece of Bristol board. If you got a really bright window that you could trace through, it would be nice to print out a photograph that was 8.5 by 11 of your head, of your face. And what I would like to do with this composition, with this project, and this is going to be a 2-week project, it's going to be a 2-week drawing, so it's going to take us a little time, but you're going to need a printer. So you're going to have to go find a printer that you can print something out with. And if you don't have a printer in your dorm room, you might have to, you know, ask a roommate or something, or go across the street to Staples and bring your image, your JPEG image, you know, so that they can print it out. You can also bring your JPEG, you know, on a thumb drive over to the library or the computer lab on the 4th floor of Tioga Hall, or the Laker Learning Commons on the 3rd floor of Tioga Hall, so that you can use printers there to print out your image. But I'd like you to print out an image of yourself that's mostly your head and shoulders, so that we can do a drawing. And the reason I want to do a drawing is so that you guys can practice drawing skills and also have something that you can give, as a holiday present to, a parent or somebody. This is going to be a twofer for you guys too, because it'll satisfy a project requirement for an assignment, and then it's also something that's suitable for framing so that you can give it away, for Christmas or any holiday to a loved one, especially a parent or something like that. So my interest in doing this project, since a lot of us don't know how to draw and we've never drawn before, is that we really do need to use a photograph to be able to give us some scaffolding, some framework from which to work. And so I'd like to, have you guys take a photograph and then print it out just on regular, bond paper, computer paper, so that you've got a black and white photograph of yourself. And then to trace it onto another piece of paper or Bristol board, if you've got a really, really bright, west-facing window where the sun is coming through, you'll be able to see what's, where the lines are and where the edges of the different values are. And what we've got here for values, we've got low key values down here in the deep shadows underneath this chin. We've got medium key values that are up here on the side of the cheek and stuff. We've got a huge range of values. The eyes are always really interesting in a drawing because there's a wide range of very high contrasting values. We have white in the whites of the eye. We have black in the pupil of the eye. And so between the white and the black and some very contrasting high and medium key values around the eyes become really interesting. It's been said that the eyes are the windows to the soul, but for artists, the eyes are the most interesting part of the composition of the portrait because they are so contrasty and they hold so much interest for us. And that interest we can find is in the way that values are expressed. This guy's wearing glasses, and the glasses also have really deep key values in the glasses with some highlights in the glasses because they're made out of plastic, and so they're highly reflective. They're glossy in their finish, and so there are highlights on some of the edges of the glasses that face the light source in the composition. And even in the stupid cigar that he is chomping on, there are low and medium key values in the cigar, and even some highlights on the cigar. Even out here where the ash of the cigar is way out on the end, there are some highlights. Coming up here into the top of the composition, there's a lot of high key values in the upper part of this thing. He's got white gray hair, so there's lots of high key values with just a few smattering of medium key values in here in the hair. His hair is receding, and so we've got this very round kind of head shape here that's dominated by a huge white highlight up here. But there's just a teeny tiny little bit of super high key value up here that helps to describe the rest of the shape for the top of the head. Now, what we're going to try to figure out in this drawing is that, up to this point, you may have been drawing with lines and using contour lines to describe the edges of shapes. But when we start talking about values in a composition, we're actually going to want to try to, maybe draw the contours of all of these shapes. Draw the contour of the ear, draw the contour of each eye, draw the contours of the glasses with shapes. But as we start to fill it in with value, we want those contour lines to disappear. We want those contour lines to either be replaced by just the contrast between value, or to just get erased so that they don't exist at all. You think that you see a line here separating his neck from the collar of his shirt. There is actually no line present here at all. All you see is the contrast between the values that have been drawn here in this shadow and the lack of value, or the super high key value that's been drawn over here in the collar of his shirt. And it's the same thing on every other shape where there's an edge to the shape. For instance, the bottom of this ear right here, you think there's a line right there, but if you were able to come down really close to this Oh my God, I could do that. I could actually bring you guys down really close to the edge of that ear. And then if I can get it to actually, come on, can you focus right there? It can't focus. Can it focus here? Come on, focus. It can't focus. All right, I see that there are some actual problems with focusing with some of these webcams. And so you're just going to have to take my word for it that that ear is actually not a line. It's a dark value. It's a dark value that's kind of a choppy set of lines here that creates a strong shadow on the bottom edge of the ear, but there is no line actually present there. That ear is only visible, that edge of that ear is only visible because of the shadow on the bottom edge of that ear that's in contrast to this piece of flesh down here on the neck. And it's the same thing with every other value shape inside this ear. Every place where there's cartilage inside the ear, there's either cartilage that is reflecting light, and so it's a higher key value, or there's a place there where there's a recess that's inset, that's not receiving light, so it's not reflecting as much light back to the viewer, and that has a lower key value or a deeper key value of light quality in those different shadows. And our job is going to be to kind of analyze the shadows and the shadow shapes in a composition and apply different values to each shadow shape to kind of get these shadows and these values to work together to create the illusion of a complex shape, like the cartilage in an ear or the eye. And the in this case, there's lots of wrinkles around the eye and stuff like that. You guys won't have wrinkles around your eyes, so we're going to have a lot more fun expressing some of the values around the eye. But there are different values around each shadow shape around the eye. There are high key values where there is a highlight and something is more light is reflected back to the viewer. There are deeper values where there's more of a shadow. There's super deep values where there is a crevice, and that's not really a line. That's just where values are happening in a deep crevice or crack in the skin. And we're going to kind of explore all of that as we draw our own value study portraits of ourselves. So that's what we're going to do next week after we get done with this. That's a little bit of a preview of our next project for today, and I'll be doing a lot more demonstrations. I'm going to be drawing my own portrait for you guys and kind of blocking in and then establishing and then refining some of the values in my portrait. And I show you a lot of these techniques, and I'll probably be doing it in rollerball ink. Sorry, because it's more visible for you guys to be able to see than trying to do it in pencil. Since I'm trying to do this in a digital format, I may have to just rely on being able to do it very artistically one time only. I only get one shot at it in rollerball ink. So I'm going to close this up and come back to you guys for now and find my talking head cam. So that's going to be our next project. That takes us up to about 35 minutes into the hour today. I would like you guys, let's see, the deadline due date for this project is tonight around midnight. So I'd like you guys to get this project finished and photograph it so that on Wednesday you'll have this photograph open on your desktop so we can share the photograph and get this thing uploaded to our coursework so that I can grade this, because I've now got the project and its explanation is all in one of the assignments in coursework for us, so we can get this thing done. All right, and so next time we're going to continue the oral critique, and everybody's going to have their project done so that we can spend about 2 to 5 minutes on each person's project, going around round robin, round the table, doing the oral critique to be able to talk about the shapes and some of the other things that are going on in compositions. So for now, I'm going to say goodbye and thank you. I will see you guys midweek on Wednesday, where we will pick up again on this oral critique of this project. So goodbye for now, and until then.